This particular area is known as Wahinekapu. So Wahinekapu at one time is where women came for cleansing. And kapu simply means because it was forbidden for men, it was only for women. And this is when we would have our women prepare themselves so that way they would hem or remove their clothing and then wrap themselves in their kapa. Then the women all came out here. They would go along the trench and then find themselves a spot so that they would be prepared to sit down. At which time there would be a kani on the outside, and it would be a clear day like this, so visibility was really great. But once he kani the pu, and this is a pu'ohe, so the pu'ohe is a bamboo that he would be able to create a sound. And once it was sounded, the women would now get prepared and find them their spot, and they would go to get themselves settled. When they kani the pu the second time, the women know as long as there's a space between them, because this is a time of spiritual cleansing, and this is a time to remove all the opala, all the negative from their body. And as they release, they will then feel new energy in. And so the cleansing of the physical body as well as the manos, the spiritual part of the individual. So when the third sound appears, this is when visibility is very, very poor because you cannot see each other. And this is when the women will remove their material and be able to sit on the material and now begin their cleansing. It can run whatever amount of time. It can go from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour. It all depends on who's the one that had decided this day of cleansing. Oftentimes the women would come, not just one, several, but as I said, they would find their individual spot. When they begin their cleansing, the steam from the vent would become like a sweat box, and the pores would open and everything would come out. So that's one way of cleansing the physical part of the body. Also, the three pickles will now become aligned, and that is the pickle from the top, the middle, and of course the bottom where life is born. So this is when you make sure that everything is aligned with each other, so that when you're done, you can begin a new journey. That whatever negative you were carrying around with you have now been removed. The women would do this until the pu would sound. First sounding of the pu, the women knew to get ready. The second, they're standing up and they're tying on their material to shield their bodies. And the third is when everything opens up, then we're able to see each other. Now, if you look up, we have a beautiful view of Mauna Loa. In this particular area, there's we know it as Keauhou, but for some, they would say, is it Keauhou or Keauhou? And it's simply because at one time, there were Mohois, and these are twin sisters. They were identical in their appearance and even in their speech. The leo, the voice, sounded exactly like. And so it's hard even for the parents to tell them apart. And so if you know the twin stories in Keauhou, they love to play around with people, especially the parents. You'll call one and the other one will answer. And that's part of them being kolohe. Keauhou at one time had the history of always female twins. Not so much as kani, it's normally female. And in this particular area, there were twins, the Mahois. And as I said, one was known as Keauhou, the other one was known as Keauhou. The difference is A-O, A-U. So this particular day, a young man, handsome in appearance, and he happened to come to their village. And when he saw one of the girls, oh, he fell in love with her. But this young man had very, very bad reputation, because for him, he had this attitude where he could love them and leave them. Hurting them was of no concern of his. So because he was very good looking, he took for granted his appearance. But his reputation followed him, and the young women knew of his reputation. And of course, he tried to slide his line and put a hit on one of the women, but she didn't want anything to do with him. And then comes the other sister, and he realized there's two, and he becomes greedy because he figured instead of having one, he could have two. But both girls don't want anything to do with him, and so they're shunning him away. And they're reminding each other, because though they don't use their leo, their voices, to speak to each other, they're able to use their ike. They're able to communicate with each other. And so they say, remember who he is. Don't allow him to become a part of who we are. And that's fine. But this young man, he's determined, because he don't want to receive a no. For him, everything is yes, and he gets to have his way. And so he's determined, and one day the women are out, they're hana, they're busy gathering firewood and doing other things for the family. So is it Keauhou or Keauhou? No one knows for sure. But as he come upon one of the young woman, he tries to overpower her, and she wants to leave the area, but he's determined. And so he grabs hold of her wrist, and he tries to force her down to the ground. Well, this young woman realized that though this young man is handsome on the outside, he's ugly, very, very ugly on the inside. And so she's determined to not allow this to happen. And so she called upon the god Ku. And if you, from Ka'u, you understand that Ku have a great relationship with the people. And as she kahea and called Ku to assist her, to save her, her wish is granted. Because at that moment, while she's in this position and being forced down, she asked Ku to allow this young man, though handsome on the outside, but very ugly on the inside, to allow everything that's within him to become his outside appearance. To allow that ugliness, the coldness, the hardness of his heart to become his true identity. And as he's forcing her down to the ground, all of a sudden his wawai become pa'a, his legs cannot move. And he's trying his best, and now he releases her hands, her lip. And as he's trying his very best to get away, his body then begins to transform. And as it transforms, it takes a new position. And if you're in this area and you look at Mauka, you'll see the pohako in the shape of a paloka. A paloka signifies ugliness. And this is a young man's true identity, for he is truly an ugly individual, though he is handsome on the outside, very ugly on the inside. But unaware to this young woman, there's a witness. And she goes home to his village, and she tells the ohana they no longer have a young son anymore, that he has been turned into this pohako, into that of a paloka. The family is disturbed, and they want to see for themselves. And when they approach the area and they see this rock, and they come to realize this devastation has been done to the beautiful son. But I want to know who created this damage. And so they said, this young woman from the village above. And so the parents and the ohana wants to go up there because they want that individual punished. And when they get to the village, and the village is called Keauhou, they see this young woman coming out, and the witness says, there she is. She is the one who had done this pilikia. It's wrong to your son. And so they want to take hold of her so that she can be punished. But just then, the other mohoi come. Now there's two. So is it Keauhou or Keauhou? Who created the act? The elders cannot make the same mistake and punish the wrong individual. So they asked the girls, but neither girl would confess because mentally they're speaking to each other. We have been our mother's opu for 9 months. And even when Hanau was born, we're together. Do not allow man to separate us. The elders cannot figure out how to get them to confess. And so they came up with this idea. We'll keep one mahoi here on this side of Keauhou, on this borderline. And the other mahoi, the other twin, will go to opposite end of Keauhou to the other borderline. And without being near each other, one or the other will confess. And so they felt that they had found a solution. But these girls knew that if they were to confess, they would still be apart because one would be punished and the punishment would have been death. And so for the very last time, these two women, speaking with each other mentally, decided that man will never allow them to ever be together. And the only way they can do this is by calling upon Ku to assist them. So as one from the east borderline of Keauhou and the other from the west borderline of Keauhou. Is it Keauhou or Keauhou? Nobody knows for sure. But as they kahea and ask Ku for his assistance, their bodies begin to elongate and each from their own section, and the bodies begin to stretch up high. And as they're reaching for each other, they know that man will never be able to separate them. And once they pa'a, it is said that when you look at Mauna Loa and you see that beautiful ridge, know that these are the sisters, Keauhou and Keaohou. When I asked my father-in-law, Judge Wahi Napoleon, he was the one who shared the stories from the very beginning. And I said, this is very interesting because that tells me that the district of Keauhou isn't just at Manuka, that it extends all the way at Keauhou Kona. My father says, my father-in-law. And he says, I believe this is why we have our mo'olelo, so that little things like this will never be lost. My father-in-law came to visit my ohana, my husband, my children, and I in 1974 of June. My husband had been trying to get the father to return home, but he was busy working, and then he came to retirement age and he's busy helping other people. But this one particular Sunday he called and he said he wanted to come home Keauhou. And my husband brought him home. But the next morning he was on a mission. And he asked me to, let's go hololo. And so we began our morning at Kalai, which most people know as South Point. And there he began this mo'olelo. But as he was sharing the stories, he was sharing place names. And then I realized he's not just sharing. He's leaving behind a kuleana. And so I had to ask my father-in-law to stop. I said, Papa, I cannot receive this because this is a gift and you're passing on a kuleana. I am simply a daughter-in-law. I don't share the koko, I don't share the bloodline. And my father-in-law says, no. I was brought up to understand that I should not or never question my kupuna or argue with my kupuna and simply be obedient. And so in this case, I had no choice. But the problem with me is that I have bad memory. And I worried that this gift will be lost. And so I tried to convince my father-in-law I am not the wisest person to leave the mo'olelo with, because, and I'm thinking it's only going to be of Kalai, South Point. And he says, no, you will never forget. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, how wrong can he be? Because I do have a bad memory. But anyway, being obedient as I am, I will listen, and he takes care of the whole portion of Kalai. Then he do Mauka of that particular area of Kamaoa. The next day we begin a new journey, and we're starting from somewhere else. So each day he adds to this kuleana until it is Friday and we're going to go camping above Kapapala. And so this, without me realizing, this will be his final trip. Because Saturday morning we pack up and we come home, and from there my father-in-law will go back to Hilo. But once he goes back, a few days later, we receive a call that it then Puhala passed away. I completely forget about my kuleana at this point, because we're busy concentrating on the loss of my father-in-law. And then all of a sudden, not right away, about a year or two, someone will ask a question. And like a Rolodex, the information will just roll out. I was in my middle teens at that time when my father-in-law passed. I'm now in my 70s. I cannot remember all my grandchildren's names, because I have quite a bit. I have over 30. And yet I can remember the mo'olelo as if it was being shared with me at this very moment. But I want to honor him. His name was Judge Wahinekapu, Napoleon. Come from the area and born and raised in Keauhou. That what he left behind for Keauhou was truly a gift, because it has helped not only share stories, but to come to the understanding how great and large Keauhou really was. Not just from Kilauea to Manukau, but beyond. He have helped with Ohana who have had pilikia. They cannot go on and be buried in a private area because it's only for family. And one Ohana for some reason will show up at my door and be heavy with that. And once they begin to share, and here comes the information, and I'll make the connection for them. That individual can go home on the Aina. And they said, no, only can be family, and she was only married. And so now I will ask him, what is your tutu's name? And he'll share. And I said, now go back. He shared. I said, one more time. And he goes back the third time, and he realized he is Ohana to the family that cares for this burial site. And then I will ask him, can your sister go home? And he says yes. Why? Because we are Ohana. So I said, I polale. And so I have found that through the mo'olelo, over the years, it has helped so much people in so many ways. Even to the point of Ka'u arguing with people from Kona, because there's iwi that they want to bring home into Ka'u itself. And they're saying the iwi don't belong in Kona, it belongs in Ka'u. And so these women are going at it. They're arguing as to who's right. They're saying, but he caught the ship here at Kealakekua. They said, yeah, but he comes from here. His koko is in here in Ka'u. And there's this hewa that's going on, and it's heavy. And from just that talking, it becomes very bitter. And all of a sudden, I'm going to share. And I'm going to share the story of the Mahoe of Keauhou and Keaohou. At the beginning, they don't really get it because they're busy being nuha with each other. But I'll simply ask, who was the ali'i when Captain Cook lost the little dinghy, the little boat? And most will say, Kamehameha. And I'll say, no, it was Keauhou. Actually, it was Keauhou's father, Kalani'opu'u, because he was a chief yet. He was a leading chief. He's the grandson of Keawe. And so, with that information, it tells you he's in this particular area is because he belongs there, which it means it's also Ka'u. And so oftentimes we settle things like this, differences. And for women, they can be very strong when it comes to arguing, but this is one way of settling things without it going any further. And for me, when this happens, I'm so grateful to my father-in-law, because to be able to become part of a peacemaker, I think that's our function. In our home, we as women, as mothers, aunties, grandmothers, this is the role we play. Oftentimes, a woman thinks of herself like, I have no value. I'm simply a mother. But you go beyond that. Think about it when your children are sick. And late in the night, who do they call? Do they say daddy? No, there's only one name everybody knows. And that's us, the mothers. They'll call mom, mommy. And we're the ones who gotta get up and deal with the fever, the stomach ache, whatever it may be. So never take ourselves for granted, because we have a leading role in our lives and in the lives of those around us, be it our children, our husbands. We do. Never think of yourself as being insignificant, because a woman in her home, husband goes to work, he do whatever his profession is. A woman, from the morning she gets up, she's caring for the baby, getting the children ready off to school, make sure they all eat their breakfast. Once they're off to school, and sometimes you got to drive them to school, then you come home, then you got to hana. You got to clean house, wash the dishes. You're doing the laundry. Taking care of everything. You feel so exhausted. And sometimes you feel like, wow, the man have no appreciation. But that's okay, because you have an important role. And your role never stops, even when you go to sleep. Because like I said, the children are sick, the husband cannot find something, even he gonna wake you up. So never think of yourself as being so insignificant. You are a very important part of your family's life. And in anything and everything you do, you are important. Now, we're in the hale of Tutu Pele. In the mo'olelo, it doesn't say she have children. But when you think about it, when they journey from Tahiti to come here, who does she carry within her bosom? It is Hiaka. And Hiaka is in a hua. And she will transport the sister to this island. So Hiaka is actually Keauhou because she's born on this island. So Pele was a mother. And motherly, she will care for her sister. So when you look at things, everything in life have a beginning. And they have a support. And this is where we come from. We are the support system. We are the core. We are the backbone. So don't think of yourself as I'm not important. And if a man says you're not, that's his point of view. But you shouldn't share that point of view, because you know how industrious you are in your family's lives and the difference we make. And no one can take that away from us. That's an individual choice. But when you give in to the thought that I'm not important, what do I know? I've never gone to college. I haven't worked. What do I know? But think about it. If you had a kupuna, a grandparent, an auntie, even a good friend who may have taken you under their wings and nurtured you, then you are receiving information. And sometimes even better than what you would get at college. Because college, everything is from books. Put the book on the shelf, you cannot remember everything. But when you're taught by someone, and that stays with you, that stays in here and in here, no matter where you go, no matter how old you get, you carry that with you. Now, I was raised by my tutu. I was taken from my parents at a very, very young age. It wasn't because my parents didn't want me. It was because they are going to grow me. They're going to nurture me. I'm young, so I don't realize that, but I come to the realization as I'm older. And when I lose them, at the beginning I feel so lost and alone because I don't have them. But when something comes up, I realize they haven't left me. They're still with me. No matter what island I go, they're with me. Because the knowledge I bring is that of them. And for me, like my father-in-law, Judge Wahinekapu, Napoleon, I continue to share his name and his mo'olelo because it is not my stories, it's his. But it's also keeping him alive and giving credit where credit is due. It would be such a shame to take the stories that are given from him and claim it as my own. That wouldn't, for me, wouldn't be right. Why? Because that's not how I was brought up by my tutu. And so I continue to perpetuate the learning that I've had received when I was very young. And so that's why I said, a book you put on the shelf, it gets damaged, you lose it, you cannot find it, there goes that information. But things that is shared with you, precious information that is shared with you by a family member, by a neighbor who takes you under their wing, be it male or female, know that this is the most precious gift you can ever receive. And oftentimes, it's better than what you can get in schools because some universities, they haven't even touched the part of people's lives. So for me, how important it is. And I go back again to say or share about the three piko. When the piko is aligned for us, be it male or female, young or old, means your mind, body, and spirit is all aligned. When there's hakaka, when there's pilike, everything is off alignment. This is when you become ill. You feel nauseated, you might feel sick, you might have back pain. These are physical pain, but it's coming from here. It's because things that are troubling you. And so that's the purpose of this site, Wahinekapu. It was to release that, to hammer all this negative energy so that you can bring all the three piko back in alignment. And so when we look at the outline of Manaloa, we see how this outline is so complete. It's one and a whole. And so we want to try our best to do that for ourselves and never let anyone create anything else than what we can do for ourselves. My name is Jessie K. I'm from the district of Keauhou, from Pahala. And I'm simply a grandmother, great-grandmother, and great-great-grandmother. As a wife, mother, and you name it, I'm everything. I have no regrets because this, for me, I was chosen for this. And hard times, good times, this is part of life. When we suffer in life and we're struggling, never look at it as being knocked down and being kicked, because that makes us stronger. Sometimes having too much makes us weak because we become very foolish and we tend to misuse these things. But when the less we have, we learn to appreciate, and we learn how to budget, and learn how to stretch things, and we learn how to conduct our lives so that we can make sure that we always stay hola, we always keep ourselves healthy to the best of our ability. And so again, I say mahalo for allowing me to share this day with you.
Thank you, Auntie.